Hi, and welcome to the OT is In, the podcast where we merge the worlds of education and occupational therapy to empower families like yours. I'm Sarah Collins, your host, an occupational therapist and a homeschooling parent. I've experienced occupational therapy by supporting families for over 15 years, but also through seeking out support of my own children, so I'm right here in the trenches with you. Though there is not one way to educate your child, there is a lot to consider when individualizing an education. And the goal of this podcast is to explain some of the why behind what an occupational therapist is thinking so you can apply it to your own family. Especially with my three favorite topics: executive functioning, handwriting, and sensory processing. Each episode will be packed with practical tips, expert interviews, and real-life stories aimed at helping you to create a supportive learning environment for your child. So, grab your headphones and get ready to dive in of the collision of education and occupational therapy. I'm Sarah Collins from Homeschool OT, and I'm thrilled to have you with me on this journey of discovery. Hey there, OT enthusiasts. Welcome back to another episode of the OT is In podcast. This time, we are here with the most exciting news. Joining me today is my great friend and collaborator, Jackie Adrian. We've been friends since our early 20s, and today we're thrilled to share something we've been working on together. I feel like I need a dun-dun-dun. We have a brand new book that highlights sensory processing. Now, this is a term that explains how each of us, yes, parents included, take in information through all of our senses all day long, every day. This processing impacts how successful we are and what we need and want to do. So when Jackie and myself both had kids struggling in this area but didn't have a picture book to help explain to them what to do, we wrote it. And as we discuss this book's path to fruition, you're going to get an inside look at how we blended our expertise to create a resource that speaks both to kids and to parents. So whether you're a caregiver or an enthusiast of occupational therapy, this episode is packed with insights into understanding sensory experiences through a beautifully illustrated story. And stay tuned for a sneak peek at the story at the end of the episode. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the OT is In. You guys, today I have the best of the best with me. This is my good friend Jackie. We've been friends since our early 20s, and we're going to go through what that story is like. And now she is the co-author with me on our brand new book that will be out on May 15th of 2025. So we're going to talk to you about this whole process, about this whole story, and why. So Jackie, before we dive into the book, can you just first introduce yourself and let's kind of, about who we are together.
Yes, so I'm Jackie Adrian. I'm an author and illustrator and artist. And yeah, I've known Sarah since, like you said, early 20s, and I just got like flutters in my heart when you were like introducing this, because we talked about this book maybe a year and a half ago, and then 6 months later, we sat down together and said, let's map this out. And here it is. So like it came together, and it's funny because you reminded me right before this started that in OT school, I would proofread your papers, and I have no recollection of that at 42 years old, but I suppose I did. And my journey to this point has been, I have my MBA, and so I worked in business. I still work in business, and I still do proofreading and editing and writing. But at this point, a kind of passion of mine is still writing, but also illustrating as well. Probably in the last 5 years or so, I got serious about that. And I self-published my first two books in 2023. And this year, I expect to have two more out.
So cool.
Yeah.
So cool. Yeah, I can't believe you don't remember. You did so many of my papers on sensory processing and all stuff as we were. So Jackie and I lived together. We were roommates for a bit of time when I was in OT school, getting my master's degree in occupational therapy. And so I even remember she and her husband used to hang up my papers when I would get an A on their refrigerator.
That was like a vague memory. That is so
funny. I'm like their kid. Woohoo, guys.
Yeah.
Here's my A. And part of those came because you edited them so well. So clearly
Oh my goodness. But I still had to hire you as an adult for my own son. And that's how this book came to fruition because I needed OT help and I never had OT services myself. I don't have a background for it except editing those papers I don't remember. At this point, I was so happy to be able to hire you to help me with my son when we were just figuring out his diagnoses for ADHD. Definitely sensory processing goes with that, possibly autism and just dyslexia, reading and writing disabilities that go with that. And Sarah, but you've been the hugest cheerleader and support to us and giving us concrete ways on how to deal with his beautiful brain.
He does have such a beautiful brain. And let's dive into that a little bit more as much as you feel comfortable talking about that. Because the main point of this story is as we're going through this journey, the chameleons are on their way to a restaurant, right? And there's two kid chameleons, I guess we could say, but two chameleons that are on their way, Sally and Seth, and they both have different reactions to way things are going, which I know you've dealt with in your home and
Yes.
us in our home as well. So yeah, go more into that for us.
Yeah, I have two sons. They're so different as is the story for most families. My oldest son is 18 months older than my youngest, and he's, I would say, pretty neurotypical. And so when my youngest son came along, he's different. We just treated him like we would any other child. You parent to the child, I think everybody does. But when we started realizing he was falling behind with his peers, not only intellectually, but socially as well, and having just some neurodivergent, the way he reacted to stimuli was neurodivergent. We knew we needed to get a little bit of help. And through talking with you, you gave us lots of like concrete skills to integrate reflexes, and that was so wonderful. And you gave me lots of books to read, and honestly, I have not read them all. And through this process, I'm getting overwhelmed as an adult trying to catch up to learning about, let's just talk about sensory stimuli because that's what this book is about. And I said to you at one point during one of our OT sessions, I said, where's the book for Luca? Where's the book that I can go through with him, read with him, he can sit in my lap, and we can explain what he's feeling and how his reactions are valid, but different than other people around him. And you said, gosh, I don't think there's a book for that. So
Yeah.
we said, let's do it. Let's figure it out. Let's put it out there.
Yeah. And the main point of that being, and I love how you're like, I want to put them in my lap and I want to talk about it because we all know that books can change lives, but we also know that we need to give our kids a language, right? So that they can express what's going on inside of their bodies and how for one person who's on their way to the chameleon cafe or for one chameleon on their way to the cafe, they're feeling overwhelmed because of all the new sights and the sounds and the smells. And then another chameleon at the same journey is feeling, oh my gosh, I can't hold it together anymore because I need more. I'm having to sit still. And so I am not overwhelmed by those sights and sounds and smells. They're not enough for me. But we need to be able to express that. And we need to have our kids to have a way to do and examples to know, oh, I'm not alone. There's others out there. And here's a way to talk about it. Yeah. So that was our goal. And hopefully, I think it does. It comes across. Now, have you read it with Luca?
I have not yet. I'm waiting to get the hard copy, which we should be getting in the next 2 weeks or so. So I can't wait, but I'm really excited. And I'll read it with my older son too. And the great thing about this is people change based on their environment. We could read it 5 days in a row, and my kids could say that they're feeling a different color. They're
Yes.
identifying with a different color. And I think that's the beauty of the book. It's you can put it in your backpack and go with your son to a doctor's appointment, and you can, or son or daughter, or if you're the grown up in any case, whoever you're with, and you can all talk about your feelings and what your experience are in that moment. It's a resource not just once to learn, but it's constantly going with you into different environments and saying each sensory response is valid and it's okay. But let's talk about how to make it more, what would you say, comfortable for you? Is that what we would say the goal, I'm feeling even at this point? You're the expert, so maybe you should talk at that point.
Do you know what I think the beauty of having a book like this, because there isn't a right or wrong way to say it, but it's the language that works with our kids. So somebody might say, I feel really calm. Somebody might say, yeah, I feel really even. Somebody might say, I feel sluggish. And that's okay too. It's whatever it is that makes you the most comfortable in that environment, so you're able to do what you need to do there. Sometimes in an environment, like if I was at a trampoline park and I felt really calm. That's weird. That's not like you should feel energized and be wanting to jump up and down, right? If I'm in a library and I feel really energized, what the way that my body is feeling and reacting doesn't match with that environment. So it the language and the environment need to come together. And that's why that's part
That's
of
the
what the book is
conversation.
talking about. Yep, that's the conversation. And that's why you're saying you could read it every single day and have different conversations around it, because there is so much that we need to consider.
Bring it to the library and say, you look like you're overstimulated. Are
Mhm.
you feeling coral, kind of like Sally does,
Mhm.
etc. You guys can read the book in
Yeah.
weeks, but let's see what would make you return to gold or look a more golden,
Mhm.
balanced color. I'll call it balanced at this point. And it's just a conversation that can always be evolving.
Yeah. And I love the way you said in there, you look like this. Like you're saying the things that you notice about your child. So maybe you notice that they're squirming in their seat, or maybe you notice that they're, like we talk a lot in the book about their facial expressions, how their skin kind of feels. And so maybe like for our kids, it could be your shoulders are tight, or you're like hunched over. Your body's going to be displaying something different that we did portray with the chameleons at certain points. But when you're saying, I notice those things, you're not assigning them a specific, like, you must be
Value.
frustrated, right? Yes. Instead, you're saying what you notice, and then you're asking them to help you to identify that. And that's so good. Before we keep going, I want to remind you of the purpose of Homeschool OT. The goal is to support you, the parent, so that you can then help your child be successful in what they need and want to do to occupy their time. This, occupy their time, is the true definition of occupational therapy. Homeschool OT was recently referred to as the search engine for when a child is struggling in their day-to-day life. This actually made me really happy. Now, part of this is because we all know how much time can be spent searching for answers, and some are often conflicting. So instead, we can work one-to-one together to discover the why, prioritize strategies, and implement them into your homeschool. So visit homeschoolot.com/services to see the range of options and get that personalized homeschool support that you need. Now, on with the show. All right, welcome back. I'm here with Jackie, our fabulous illustrator of this book. Jackie, I want you to dive in a little bit more about your process of art. One, I think because it's really cool for us to be able to encourage our kids and their thought processes, and to do that, we need to have examples, but also what you were thinking so that there would be discussion for parents as they were reading this book.
I think we did that together, Sarah. We started thinking about how are we going, okay, so we could have picked a different outwards changes to any kind of person or animal, but we chose chameleons because they change in the wild. They actually do change with emotion, which is something I learned throughout this process, but I think it's more commonly known that they change with their environment. And so you and I thought, I remember sitting down with you and we were picking the colors and what made sense to illustrate the changes. And to be honest, I'm a newer illustrator, so I my last books were in collage, and one of my forthcoming books is in collage. And a complete electronic illustration was a new format for me, and I really like the simplified chameleons. They're pretty, they
So
do,
cute.
yeah, they change, but their facial expressions change and their color changes and some of their motions change, but for the most part we wanted to keep it really simple So the story and the meaning of it stayed focused, right? So
Mhm.
there isn't a lot of, even the backgrounds, we were careful. They're pretty bright, but we didn't want them to be completely overstimulating. So from page to page, you will see differences, but it's not so much different that you, like my other books are like more overwhelming, I would say, with color and changes and a lot going on. And for this one, I really had to pare down, and it's still pretty exciting, I think, when you look at the
I think it's
pages.
exciting too.
But the focus is clearly on the colors of the chameleons, what they're doing with what they're going through in the storyline, and that matching their actions and where they are on their journey to the Chameleon Cafe to have some lunch.
One of my favorite pages that you did was the bugs that they eat, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
we talked about how taste and smell and even the texture of food can influence how a person, and in this case, how chameleons are feeling, like, and their energy levels and how their bodies are processing all of that. One being more crunchy foods are typically more alerting. Chewing and sucking can be very calming to the nervous system. And we talked about that in there. A super salty bug, I think is what we said, or probably
Yeah.
different words. I don't remember, but
Yeah. And then a crunchy bug, another, or
yeah,
something at another point. Yeah.
yeah, some of my favorites. So even when you're coming up with those kind of small details, I felt like when I looked in at the bugs, I was like, yeah, I could totally imagine that one being crunchy.
Yeah, yeah. The bugs are a little bit more detailed than some of the others. I think some of my favorite pages are, I love the one where Sally is bouncing on her tail, singing, and her tongue is out, and she's having a grand old time in her coral color of high stimulation. And then
Yeah,
at the very end, I really like the canopy the tree makes in the beautiful nighttime,
yeah.
where chameleons get tucked into bed at the end of the story after a very long day for some of them. So
For mama
it
included.
was a lot of fun to illustrate, and it was really a fun process to stretch myself in a different way and figure out how I was going to do that without being too overstimulating, but also making it interesting.
So, as a parent, and I know since you're an artist, that you encourage your kids to do so too. So, what were some things, questions that you were asking yourself as you were going through? Like maybe some things that you even pointed out in your own drawings that, or your own illustrations that you would say for parents, like when they're looking at their kiddos' drawings, like what are some things they can talk about and say?
Why did you choose that color? What does the person or the animal or whatever you're drawing look like? How do they feel? What do you think is going on in their body right now? There's a lot of questions you can ask, and it, yes, it doesn't matter what they're drawing or what they're creating. They could, like, as a collaging, creating something with Play-Doh, etc. But like the stimuli we're responding to in those moments, sometimes they often, there's a reason for it. And if what you have taught me to do with my kids is pull out that reason.
Yeah.
I see that this is happening. Why do you think that is happening? I see that this might be how you feel. Is that accurate? And always it's choice, it's their journey, but letting them become more aware of their body and how to regulate it each and every day.
So, one of the other pieces of this story was that as they were moving through, they were saying they were coming up with ideas together with Mama, and Seth and Sally were coming up with ideas to regulate. And then at the end, she's always, oh, you knew just what to do. And then by the end, they're like, oh, I knew just what to do,
Yeah.
which it requires that interoception or knowing what's going on in your body.
There's
And then
OT word alert.
yeah, here it is, lingo,
Yes.
lingo.
Yeah.
But
How do I teach my child that? That was how this
yeah,
started. How do I teach?
yes,
You're telling me these big words. How do I explain it to him? Yeah.
yep. And that's exactly by asking those questions, even if it's something in art, why did you draw that? Or what was their face doing? Or anything like that in art. And then again, to their bodies, pointing it back to internally what's going on inside of their bodies. And then what do we do? There are, like we've mentioned, being in a trampoline park or something, like there are specific times when you want to be like amped up, right? You want to feel really your body to almost be jittery and to feel like you're ready to move all the time. There are spots where we want that.
Yeah, before
So
sports competition, before
Yeah,
a
yeah.
presentation, maybe before a podcast, even though I'm pretty comfortable with you. I don't think we had that today, but yeah.
Hopefully you do, for sure. And
Yeah.
hopefully as you're listening that you do, you feel that sense of, oh, this is interesting, but I'm calm, right? You're not like ready to run a marathon. Maybe you are. Maybe you're running. Jackie's a runner. You can run with her.
But the point is that, that you were saying like you knew just what to do. I know just what to do. So we were trying to teach the kids and then empower them at the end. And then also saying, hey, as adults, we are still regulating ourselves. We're still checking in with our bodies and our environments and saying, was that too much for me? Or I had a great day, but now I need to not answer my phone.
Yeah, for sure.
And so
Yeah.
I think that's almost on every page. We have a situation and then either just what to do or I know just what to do. And it's really empowering to teach your children that they don't have to look to you or how they feel and how they should react. They can be in charge of that. Autonomy is important in this world.
Yeah. Yeah. And also that mama models it at the end. She's, oh, I need to get under my covers and I know just what to do too, or I also know just what to do. Because we as parents, we set the stage. If we're ignoring what we need and then all of a sudden we're screaming and yelling at our kids, or we're ignoring what we need and we're so exhausted by the end of the day that we can't be there for our kids, that we are unable to because we have not taken care of ourselves. And we have several episodes back on rest and on the homeschool mom yourself, which is not always the self-care of I need to get my nails done, get a glass of wine, whatever, not necessarily that self-care, but me time, the consumerism of that. Instead, what is rest and regulation for the mama? And I think this should hopefully also give some lead into conversation of, wait, look, mama needed that too.
Yes. So this is a communication tool, right? That's why we did it. I wanted a communication tool for my son, and you want a communication tool that you can tell families for their children that they need this. I sometimes would say my neurodiverse child, he goes to a public school and that's pretty overwhelming for him at moments. And he has earplugs that he puts in his lunchbox so he can tune out because lunch is just way too wild.
Yeah.
And without having this book, sometimes my conversation is things like how you feel in the lunchroom sometimes. That's how I'm feeling right now. I need to take a step back, or I need you to give me a moment. But with the book, you can take that situation that I just said and you can say, I'm feeling coral. I would like to feel gold in this situation, so I need a moment. It's just like a quick communication tool.
Yeah. Yeah. Using colors. Oh, I love it so much. Oh, Jackie, tell us before we go about some of your other books that you've done so that everyone can find those and find you.
Oh, sure. Thank you. So my first book I did is called As You Grow, I Want You to Know, and it's wisdom nuggets about self. And it was written for my children because, again, like this book, I'm always trying to find ways to communicate ideas to my kids in a more succinct, clear manner that's age appropriate. And this book grows with them, but it's 15 wisdom nuggets about self-love, self-care, staying true to yourself, not worrying about what other people think. And it's just a really beautiful, a lot of people have compared it to like Eric Carle, but it's on that realm of what it looks like. It's a little bit more packed. The pages aren't quite as spare as what he does, but people have been buying that book for new babies all the way up to like college and high school graduations, or saving it for fifth, sixth grader promotions, because it's that type of book. It's a gift giving book that you keep. I've had another family buy it so that each year their new teacher kids can write in it. Right? So it's like that kind of book. It's one that grows with you and you can focus on different parts of it in different times of your life, but it's like universal. My forthcoming book is second in that series. It's wisdom nuggets for relationships. And so it's all about interpersonal, and it goes around the globe actually. And it goes to all these different countries and it talks about how the wisdom nugget I give is displayed in that country and how it relates to all of us,
Ooh,
regardless
I
of where.
love this.
So yeah. And then I'd have another just like simple alphabet book with alphabet flashcards in there and collage. So it's a beautiful, simple book. But yeah,
I
so
love how you have so many different genres almost. You're like, yeah, I've got this one that's going to really tell a story. I've got a lot of wisdom nuggets. And then here's how you're going to learn the alphabet because
well,
you
it's
need that
funny.
too.
You were involved in the alphabet
I
one
know.
too, because do you remember, and I'll just say this really quickly, I was trying to teach my dyslexic child how kindergarten, bare minimum, we just wanted him to have uppercase letters if that's all we could get. And we almost got there, but we worked so hard. And Sarah, you had the brilliant idea of Velcroing those flashcards into the book. And he loved that because he's ADHD, so he needed a game, did some incentive, and he would ask to play that game with me all summer. And that's the only reason why he went to school with the skill set he had.
Look at
So
that.
thank you, Sarah. Getting my correcting your papers when we are younger. Like
That's right. It all comes full circle.
credit coming back. Yeah, exactly. It's funny, but yeah, we've been helping each other in all sorts of decades of our lives.
Yeah, that's so good. So good. Thank you so much for joining me here on the OT is In podcast. And Jackie, we can get this book now. You obviously have gone through this so many more times than me, but people starting May 15th, 2025 are going to be able to get it on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all the places, right?
Yes, I would encourage anybody. It will help us tremendously as authors if they would pre-order the book starting April 11th, which is probably before this even airs.
Yeah.
As soon as you pre-order the book for all your neurodivergent friends and even neurotypical families,
Yeah.
you can use it as well. That will help us, but then it will be shipped to you immediately on May 15th.
So exciting. So exciting.
Available
And
in hardback and paperback.
yes, and at any of the conferences where I am this summer, so at the Virginia Homeschool Conference, the Minnesota, Pennsylvania, the Special Needs Conference in North Carolina, I will make sure that they are there too. But yes, we would love it if you order from starting April 11th.
Yeah, Sarah's website, my website, or any other places that you usually get books. Your local bookstore can request it, and that's a wonderful way to support local.
Thank you again for being here. And online, what is your website? And we'll make sure it's all linked in the show notes, but how can they find you?
Very easy. It's www.jackieadrian.com.
Awesome.
Yes. Thanks, Sarah. I'm so glad that we got to do this. It's a different thing for us. Usually we're just hanging out. So
I know, chatting on our walks.
Yep.
Here it is. More formal, but still fun.
Yes.
Before we go today, I want to give you a special sneak preview into the new book, A Chameleon Tale, by myself, Sarah Collins, and my co-author and favorite illustrator, Jackie Adrian. So I am going to read you just the very beginning snippet of it, though if you tune in through this entire month of May, you will hear the entire book. So it starts, and if you're watching on YouTube, you can see these beautiful pictures and illustrations. If not, I want to just let you have a snippet of the words, and then you can also hear how I would discuss this with my own kids. So, A Chameleon Tale. It's a beautiful day in the rainforest. Seth and Sally feel safe and calm in their familiar fig tree home, so their skins shine a bright gold, and Mama has a surprise for them. Let's go, Seth and Sally. I want to take you to the Chameleon Cafe on this perfect day. Now you can see the pictures of Sally and her beautiful gold skin. Now, leaving the comfort of their fig tree, the sights, the sounds, the smells that Seth knows so well makes him feel unsure. Seth feels alarmed by this new plan and has a lot of questions. Where is this cafe? Who will be there? Will it rain on the way? Seth's smile leaves his face while his skin feels tight and it turns a bright aqua, a shade of blue. Okay, so some ways that I would discuss this with my own kids. First of all, I might talk to them, ask them questions about what their skin would feel like. I want to know, obviously, our skin doesn't change colors, but does it ever feel tight like Seth described there? And when would that happen? I'd also like to talk to them about, if we're thinking how Seth's smile leaves his face while his skin feels tight, what might their facial expressions tell me? And since Seth did feel so unsure, because his day was different than what he was expecting. Now, recognizing that this is flexible thinking, right? When you are expecting one thing and then something else completely happens, that's an executive functioning skill. And this develops, it's one of the later portions of our brain, all the way in the prefrontal cortex. So this develops all the way up till 25. So expecting this flexible thinking to happen is often very difficult for our children. So I might talk to them, have we ever had surprises like that really changed your day? And how did that affect you? What might be easier? Do we need some preparation? Or did you like the surprise, right? Let's talk about that and see how that goes. Also, then, think about how we can support Seth in this case. See if your kids have ideas, because it's a lot easier to talk about these executive functioning skills and sensory processing with somebody else than it is in ourselves. So I hope you guys stay tuned for the rest of May so that you can begin to hear more about the Chameleon Cafe and purchase it wherever you find your books, on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, because they are open right now for pre-sale.